Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we have a fun project. We're going to be using these really nice glass ornaments. I got these on Amazon. I will link them down below in the description box. We're going to start by sanding the glass. I've got 150 grit sandpaper here. You can use anything between 60 to 220, whatever you have on hand. Once I've sanded the entire surface area of my ornament, I'm going to clean any remaining debris or contaminants with some acetone and a paper towel. Next, I'm going to mount my ornament to a turner arm. Because we're going to be epoxying this ornament, I need to fasten it to some sort of cup turner. I use TheBoan cup turners. They are no longer in business. I also use MH turners though. They are in business, and I will link them down below if you need a cup turner. The little attachment that I'm using here to hold my ornament onto the cup arm is from Destiny Dream Labs. I absolutely love this attachment. It goes on super easy and holds my ornament in place the whole time. After I've got that on the cup arm, we're going to spray paint this with a flat white spray paint. Alcohol ink needs a flat kind of paint surface to adhere to for the technique that we're going to be using today. So this is the exact paint that you want to use. I could not recommend anything else because everything else has not worked as well or at all for this type of project. So 10 out of 10 would recommend this. You can get it at Walmart. It's very inexpensive. Once we've spray painted this, I'm going to let it dry. You can speed that up using a blow dryer, and then we'll put a second coat of spray paint on here. We want a nice, beautiful, flat white finish for our ornament before we start on our painting. For my painting today, I'm going to be using my alcohol inks, all from Black Bear Glitters, of course. I will link them down below. I think I have every color, and I absolutely love these inks. They are gorgeous. I've got a palette too that I use these with, and I've got 3 medicine cups that I'm going to be using for my clean cups, and we're going to fill that with 91% rubbing alcohol. Here's the palette of colors that I've decided to work with today. I will have them listed below in the description box. I'm going to squirt a few drops of each color into my little pot on my palette here, and using some cheap paintbrushes that I found on Amazon, I am going to start with my lightest color first, and that's where we're going to start with the horizon line of our sunset. I'm going to be painting the very bottom of the ornament along with the mountain range line up about a quarter of the ornament. So don't worry about painting the very bottom because you're not going to see it later. You'll see what I mean later on in the video. Starting with that brightest color, I'm going to paint around the ornament using just kind of dabbing brush strokes, nothing really spectacular here. We're just kind of patting on the color. It's very important after I dip my brush into the color that I tap it onto a paper towel so I could see the color and the saturation that I have on my brush before I tap it onto the ornament. You'll notice in the video that I'm not doing this every time. That's because I've painted this same design multiple times, so I know the saturation levels with each color and with each dip, if that makes sense. And if you want to mute the color a little bit, just dip it into your clean cup of just the rubbing alcohol, blot it onto your paper towel so you can see the saturation of color, and then proceed with tapping the color onto the ornament. You'll start to see the sunset take shape the more you start patting on that color and the inks start to kind of blend into each other, forming these beautiful kind of watercolor cells and I don't know, gradient of color. I'm not sure what to call it. Anyway, we're just going to continue to pat that color on, going darker and darker until we get about halfway up, because this is where we're going to want to start working into some of the darker colors like the teals and the navy blue. But before that, I want to make sure I have all of the yellow parts of our sky covered. So taking just a clean brush with mostly rubbing alcohol and just a little bit of ink on it, I'm going to go through and close some of these gaps as well as blend some of these lines using that lightest color of yellow and just kind of diluting that with some of the clean rubbing alcohol. Once I'm happy with the yellow, orange to red sections that I have so far, I'm going to move on to kind of the blue transition of our skyline. So taking the teal color, I'm going to water that down with my rubbing alcohol just a little bit. You'll notice that I keep dabbing my brush onto my paper towel until I'm happy with the level of saturation. Once I'm happy with the color I have on my brush, I'll start to tap that right along the edge of that red and orange. This color tends to mix with these colors and look a bit brown or dark. It's not going to mix and turn purple like you would expect with like a blue and a red. I learned that the hard way. So just be careful to not try and blend these two colors too much. They really aren't going to blend that much without looking brown. So do some minimal blending here. And by blending, I mean grabbing just a little bit of the clean rubbing alcohol, dab that on your paper towel and run that along the lines where the two colors intersect. And that's where you'll start to get some of that watercolor blending. We always want to make sure our brush is not too drippy because we don't want our colors dripping and blending into each other where they're not supposed to. So that's why it's so important to have that paper towel right next to your palette to keep dabbing off any kind of excess juice. Once I've got the transition line of that kind of lighter teal along the red and orange, I'm going to start going through with the darker colors and gradually getting darker with my saturation as I get to the top. Once I get to the top, I'm going to go in with my darkest color, which is Bachelor Buttons. It's a beautiful navy ink that I think is perfect for this type of skyline. And starting from the top of the ornament, we're just going to blend that down into the teal sections. And then go back around with kind of a cleaner brush and just some regular rubbing alcohol and start to blend between that dark to light. Being sure not to bring, again, too much of that blue or teal into the red sections as it's going to look kind of muddled. Overall, this shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes. Don't try to overthink it. It is really that easy. Once we're done, I'm going to let this sit to dry overnight before we move on to the next step. I also wanted to show you guys a different colorway with the same technique that might be a little more user-friendly if you've never worked with alcohol inks before. But we're going to do all kind of minty teals and blues and not have as much contrast. So starting with the lightest green, this is Aloe. I'm going to dab that onto the bottom. This is where our horizon line will be behind the mountains, so we want it to be the lightest color. Then I'll start to gradually move into a darker green. Again, blotting as we go to make sure we have the right amount of saturation and no drips. I'm going to keep repeating this process and moving into a darker color each time as I move up further onto the ornament until I get into my darkest color, which is that same Bachelor Buttons navy ink that we used on the first ornament. With each pass that I get further and further up the ornament, I just get more and more ink on my brush to get a deeper saturation of color so that we end up with this beautiful gradient. I think I only used one brush for this whole ornament. No, I'm sorry, we used two. And that was it. So it does make it a lot easier if you stick to kind of one colorway. You could do this in a variety of colorways. Think of like a purple sunset or a pink sunset. And you really don't even have to have it be an Oh Holy Night scene with the nativity and all that. You can do palm trees and, you know, maybe your favorite place of vacation is Mexico and you can have kind of a Mexico themed ornament as like a reminder for your favorite places. I don't know. The ideas are endless with this one. It's so much fun to do. Really what I enjoy is having that flat white canvas to work with on the ornament and letting your imagination run wild with the inks, and it turns out absolutely beautiful every time. And you guys, I am not very skilled with painting. I do have a lot of practice with the alcohol inks, but I'm telling you, this is a lot easier than it looks. You're going to want to let these dry overnight. You do not need to seal the ink. You just need to make sure that it is fully dry before we epoxy over it. I've mixed 20 milliliters of my Flynn Sisters Fast Cure Epoxy. I also mixed in a little tiny bit of extra fine glitter just to give this some sparkle and something special. And we're just going to coat this ornament like I would coat a tumbler, really. We're going to get every bit around the ornament with a gloved finger and try to avoid the arm attachment that we have it on. You'll notice that this ornament I just taped with electrical tape onto the cup arm. I didn't have the cool fancy attachment that Angel sent me when I originally filmed this part of the video. Anyway, once we've got this nice and coated, all even, I'm going to hit it with my torch to pop any remaining bubbles. And I'm going to let this dry for a couple hours before we move on to the next step. Remember that your dry time may vary based on the type and brand of epoxy that you're using. All right, now that our epoxy is fully dry, I'm going to start drawing in the mountain range, which I just went ahead and freehanded because it was really easy to do. And then I filled that in with just a thicker black acrylic marker. Once that was dry, I moved on to the stars, which I also painted with an acrylic marker. This is a fine point one from Posca. Next, I cut the three little wise men in our nativity scene using just black vinyl and my Cricut. I don't remember where I got these original files from. I will try to link them down below. But using a ruler, I just tried to size them to where I think they would look appropriate and to scale on our ornament here. So no more than probably 1.5 inches wide. This is a 3 1/4 inch or a 3 1/2 inch ornament, so I do have a good amount of room to work with. So you're just going to place that right against the mountain range that we just painted with our acrylic black marker. It should be completely dry and we shouldn't be disturbing it by applying this decal here. But if you don't have a flat place in your mountain range to set the nativity scene, just place the decal down and then raise up the ground to meet it with your marker so that it blends in and makes sense. And I'm going to do the same thing with a little 3 wise men decal. So just place that along the mountain line and then raise the ground to meet the bottom of the decal with your marker. Once I was done with that, I placed the little star there, and then I also had an Oh Holy Night decal that I cut with white vinyl. I also put in a little 1/2 inch crescent moon to the left side of the Oh Holy Night, which I don't think I included in the filming, but anyway, these little details were my very favorite part, and it was a little bit tedious getting all those little vinyl decals on there, especially with the Oh Holy Night. I did have to cut it a little bit. I sized the Oh Holy Night decal to be about 2.5 inches wide. I tried to get it as big as I could without disturbing the rest of the design. Once I got all those on there, I was ready to coat our final coats of epoxy, and we were done. So for the final coat, I just mixed 20 milliliters of my Flynn Sisters Artist Cure Epoxy. For the final coat, I wanted to use that just to make sure that we have a nice, beautiful, long-lasting finish on this. And that was it. It was so easy to do. Once this was fully dry, I was easily able to remove the tape that was holding the ornament onto the arm. If your tape got a little bit stuck because your epoxy went up too far on the arm, that's okay. Just grab your torch or something to melt down the epoxy a little bit, just enough to loosen the tape to get it off. It's not an issue. And then replace the ornament topper that came with it like I did here, and you're ready to hang it on your tree or gift to a loved one. I absolutely love how these turned out. I think this is probably one of my favorite projects that I've ever made. I don't know. That's a pretty strong statement coming from me because I've made so much fun stuff. But let me know what you guys thought about these. If you're gonna make one, be sure to tag me. I'd love to see them. Thanks so much for watching my video, and happy holidays to you all. And a big thank you to all of our Flynn Sisters exclusive members. Thank you for your pledge. Your support means the world to our channel. If you love this video, you could check out our last video here. Also be sure to find us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and of course subscribe for all our new videos that come out every Wednesday and Saturday. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.